Now it's my great pleasure as we really open the competition to welcome our first lecturer to Banff, to BISC. Such a pleasure to have Rob Kapilow here. How many of you have had the Rob Kapilow treatment? How many of you know about? Oh, a lot of you have. Well, some of you haven't. Those of you who have, you know what you're in for. Those of you who haven't, let me, in the 3 minutes I have, do a very brief introduction. He's an incredible guy. It's simply all I can say in a phrase. He is a composer, he's a conductor, he's a pianist, and he's one of the most exciting speakers, never mind just on classical music, but certainly on classical music. You think you know music until you actually experience a Rob Kapilow afternoon or morning. You think you know this music. You think you've listened to it, but he will really take you into the music and help you to understand what real listening is about, not just hearing. The light bulbs will go on over your head constantly throughout this morning, I can assure you. Many of you know his series called What Makes It Great. He's been doing it for at least 15 or more years. It's now also a book, and it's now also an e-book with embedded musical examples in it. It's just the most amazing thing. So if you have an iPad, and I think somebody's already either got one or is ordering one as we speak, it's the first, right? It's the first, Rob. He somehow convinced Apple to do this, and wouldn't you know it, classical music leads the way again. And his Music for Kids series, of course, has been wonderful in not only entertaining young kids about music and teaching them about music, but also bringing their parents in as well, the 20 and 30-year-old parents. So all of that is terrific. But the thing about Rob is that he brings such energy and passion and commitment to what he does. And you know, he's so smart and all the information is there, but it's the energy, the passion. He's been called the classical music's greatest evangelist. So I thought about him as sort of the classical music Billy Graham, except he's Jewish. So the Jewish, no, it doesn't work. But anyway, you understand what I mean about him being a classical music evangelist. And he's so much more. I think the best way really for me to introduce him is just to mention a few other things that he's been described at. In the Boston Globe, he's described as an educator, a motivational speaker, and a game show host all at once. And then, of course, the fact is that he can speak to both newbies as well as those of you here today who have been listening to music for 50, 60 or more years. Absolutely, he can do that. I think this is my favorite note of all that appeared in the New York Times, a description of Rob Kapilow. Mr. Kapilow is like an intellectual golden retriever. Glossy, tireless, and raring to chase after anything resembling a musical bone. Isn't that great? So how lucky are we? We're so lucky to be in Banff, so lucky to hear all this music we're going to hear all week, so lucky to be among friends who are so committed to this music form that we love and share, and so lucky that to open, we have Rob Kapilow. Welcome, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to BISC 2013, Let the Madness Begin. Yeah. Before we start, I'm just always curious to know who I'm talking to, so just a couple of quick questions. How many of you have been to one of the Banff competitions before? Oh, wow, that's an enormous number. Wow, so you know what you're in for. Okay, how many of you are coming for the first time, never been here before? Excellent, good. Now, how many of you, to be honest, are intending to come to absolutely everything? Every single, wow, that's unbelievable. We'll have to see how many of you actually do it at the end. All right. Two more quick questions. How many of you are either professional or amateur musicians of some kind? Oh, a large number. And then, of course, the last and most important question. Is there anyone here who has not yet finished reading my 2 books? Fine. All right, good. Now, when Barry first asked me to come and do this talk, I immediately said yes. Having known and collaborated with Barry for something like 20 years on an enormous range of projects, basically whenever Barry asks you to do anything, you just say yes. Besides, who could resist the opportunity to come to Banff at probably the only time of the year when you can reasonably expect that there won't be snow? Now, when he asked me to come, again, I said yes, but I had no idea what I would actually talk about. I simply put the date down on my calendar, went on to just do the rest of life. But then when the brochure deadline came near, brochure deadlines, by the way, the only reason anything ever gets done in the world of classical music. But when the brochure deadline came near and Barry actually asked me, well, what do you actually want to talk about? I initially thought I would sort of talk about some aspect of the BISQ repertoire, something like Dennis's talk on Beethoven that's coming up or Nick's talk on Bartok. But then I saw that I was actually the first talk of the entire festival, and I thought I should talk about something broader, something that would give you a larger perspective on the entire competition and that would meaningfully include all three groups that really make this competition so special. The quartets themselves, the judges, and really all of you, the audience, because I believe that you are an absolutely crucial component of what makes this quartet competition so special. So, what to actually talk about? Well, in a sense, the question sort of behind the entire week, the basic premise of this whole thing is, to use my own trademark phrase, what makes a string quartet great? What are these quartets as performers striving for, and what are we as listeners and judges actually listening for this week? Now, though that question might sound incredibly simple, the answer is anything but, as will be evidenced, I am sure, by all of you profoundly disagreeing with each other, me, and surely with whatever the judges decide by the end of the week. Now, I want to come at this question, though, in a kind of odd, circuitous, roundabout way, by virtue of a brilliant 7-word poem by Mary Oliver that I happened to stumble across earlier this summer that I just think will somehow, hopefully, after you memorize it, and we're going to memorize it first, serve as a kind of mantra for you to return to over and over again this week as you listen to all the quartets perform. Now, for the purposes of today's talk, you might want to change the title of this just slightly, and you might want to title it for today either Instructions for Winning a String Quartet Competition, if you want to think of this from the perspective of the actual quartets themselves, or Instructions for Listening to a String Quartet Competition, if you want to think of it from your perspective as the audience. But the actual title of this poem is the simpler and more universal Instructions for Living a Life. Now, the actual poem from the book Redbird reads, Instructions for Living a Life. Pay attention. Be astonished, tell about it. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Now, those 7 words are the compositional motif, so to speak, or the that I want to talk about today, develop, discuss, explore, and meditate on in a particular kind of way so that when we come back to those 7 words, and let's make sure we've got them, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Tell it. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. So that when we come back to these words at the end of today's talk, like coming back to the main theme of a string quartet in a recapitulation, when we come back to these words at the end, we'll not be coming back to words or material that we've heard and understood before, but we'll understand those words in a new way. And we will, as T.S. Eliot says, come back to the place we started and know that place, these 7 words, for the first time. Okay, so these are the 7 words. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. That's what I want to talk about. And so let's start at the beginning, exposition, so to speak, to pay attention. Now, I've been thinking for a lot of years about what it means to pay attention as a listener and as a performer. And I want to come at this question in a kind of odd, roundabout, personal way. So I'm just going to have to give a little bit of biographical context here. It's not important to know about me, but it'll give you sort of a context of what this is all about. To pay attention. What does it mean to pay attention? And I want to start with a particular story, but to give you the basis of this story, first I have to go back one step. When I was in college, I had a roommate who became a kind of a distinguished psychiatrist in New York. And he said to me once that most of us know what we know. He said some people who are self-aware also know what they don't know. He says, but what's really interesting and where psychiatry begins is with what we don't know that we don't know. And so I want to start with what I didn't know about paying attention when I was 19 years old that really led to this entire talk. Now, I know you haven't all finished my books, but my first book, all you have to do is listen. There's a brilliant chapter called Forwards, Backwards, Listening. Now, maybe the chapter isn't so brilliant, but it actually is based on an absolutely brilliant quote from Kierkegaard, which says, "Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward." I love that quote. Now, I'm sure you've all had some portion of your life that you lived that felt or looked disorganized, chaotic, random, directionless, confused as you lived it going forward, but somehow seemed to make perfect sense years later, looking backwards at it. And though I had no idea when I was 19 that a sophomore year art history class would somehow be connected to dropping out of college the next year, or beginning a national public radio series 10 years after that, or writing 2 books 30 years after that, or coming here and giving this talk today, at that time I didn't know it. But looking back now, I can see the connections that were invisible to me that I missed then. Events that look unconnected in life and in Beethoven going forwards can turn out to be powerfully connected when you look back. I mean, who would ever guess that this would possibly be related to this? If you want to know how, we'll talk about it in the Q&A. Okay, now, let me start with this art history class. Well, the truth is, the only reason I took this art history class was because the woman I was dating at the time was a painter, and I was embarrassed at how little I knew about art. In a way, I was sort of about art the way a lot of people are who are non-musicians or non-music lovers are about music. I went to galleries every so often. I liked what I liked, or to use my friend's terms, I knew what I knew. I thought I knew what I didn't know, which was pretty much everything except liking what I liked. But I had absolutely no clue about what I didn't know that I didn't know. Now, this class was amazing. There were 3 classes during the week, and the first 2 classes were normal, standard art history lectures with slides, filling in a lot of the information factually that I knew I didn't know about the artists, about the paintings, the society at the time, the place of Impressionism and the history of art, all that kind of stuff. And the lectures were insightful, thought-provoking, brilliant, but to be honest, they weren't revelatory. They didn't transform the way I actually looked at art. However, the 3rd class each week was just amazing. Each week, Professor Herbert would pick one painting in the Yale Art Gallery, and he would take us to the Yale Art Gallery, and he would stand in front of this painting, and he would talk about one painting for an hour. I mean, the class was a kind of master class on the art of paying attention. I realized that there is a vast difference between looking and seeing. I realized I had looked at paintings all my life, but I had never actually seen them. You know, just a little aside, over the past 2 summers I've been doing a series of concerts that I call The Music of Art in collaboration with Ottawa Chamberfest and the National Gallery of Canada. And each program pairs music and live performance, one piece, with one piece of art. And it was interesting, I was talking to the people at the museum, and they said they do a lot of studies on how long people spend at their pictures. And the average amount of time spent looking at a painting in the National Gallery of Canada is 5 seconds. Okay. So anyway, each week we would spend an hour looking at one painting, and it was just a fantastic, description of what it means to actually look. Now, the final exam for this course was absolutely amazing. And Mary Oliver's poem could have been the words of the actual assignment. The assignment for the final project was we were supposed to pick one painting that we loved in the museum, and we were supposed to stand in front of it for 3 hours at a single setting. You couldn't go back. You had to stand in front of it for 3 hours, look at it, and then write about it. Or in Mary Oliver's terms, we were supposed to pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. This was an amazing experience. I highly recommend it to you, though it's possible that the guards will be suspicious if you stand there for 3 hours. But even if you can't do 3 hours, even try 2 or even try 30 minutes, it is a truly unbelievable experience. Now, though at the time I would have never really connected this revelatory experience about the difference between looking and seeing with my decision to drop out of college a year later, I now see how incredibly connected they were. At the end of my sophomore year at Yale, I'd taken all the required music theory, music history courses that the department had to offer, and I had done quite well in them. But I had this vague, uncomfortable sense that what I had learned was woefully inadequate. I didn't know what I didn't know about music, but I sensed that this couldn't possibly be the training that Bach and Beethoven had. I mean, this couldn't be all there was. Now, at the time, I had just planned to go home and teach tennis, which I had done every summer in order to make enough money to go back the next year. Had no other plans. But then I overheard this conversation between 2 professors in the music department about this woman named Nadia Boulanger. How many people still know that name? Wow, a lot of you do good. For those of you who don't know or feel inferior to the people who just raised their hand, which is why you learn about these kinds of things in the first place, what classical music is all about. Nadia Boulanger was probably the most famous composition teacher of the 20th century, and she taught some of the 20th century's most famous composers. She taught Gershwin, she taught Stravinsky, she taught Copland, she taught Piston, she actually taught Philip Glass, she taught everyone you can possibly, Pierre Boulez, Elliott Carter, me, all the important composers of the 20th century. In any case, at the time, I hadn't really heard of, she also had a great Hollywood moment. You might have seen her there. In the 1970 movie Love Story, Ally McGraw gets a scholarship to go study harpsichord with Nadia Boulanger in Paris, but instead decides to marry Ryan O'Neal, get leukemia, and die. In any case, at the time, I didn't know who Nadia Boulanger was. But as these professors talked about her disparagingly, making fun of her, saying how ridiculously old-fashioned she was, making her students do thousands of harmony and counterpoint exercises, score reading in the 7 clefs, study solfege, keyboard harmony, the more they made it sound awful, the more excited I got. And I thought, I've got to go study with this woman. So I got my tennis money together, flew myself over to Paris for my first lesson with the famous Nadia Boulanger. Now, at the time, I was preparing for a piano competition, and there was a required piece, a Mozart A minor sonata in this piece. And so I sat down at the famous piano, and I got to understand how just awe-inspiring it is. You're going, first of all, she lives on Place Boulanger. The national government has named her street for her. You're walking up the stairs, you know, that Stravinsky walked up, Copland, Bernstein. You're sitting down at this famous piano that Stravinsky played the Rite of Spring on for her before the famous opening. I mean, terrifying experience. So I sat down to play, but I was 19, so I thought I belonged there. So I sat down, you know, to play my Mozart for her. And she hit me. Now, you have to understand that at the time she was about 160 years old, and everybody said, you know, she was blind. But you know that place like in the shoulder that really hurts, right there? So she hits me right in the shoulder and she says, Kapilow, this is grotesque. She says, you play this exquisite passage as if it were this. All right, how many of you heard the difference? All right, now I would love to tell you that I heard the difference, and I said, Mademoiselle, I get it, thank you so much, I'm so glad I came to Paris, it's all clear to me now, went home and my life was changed. Now, I didn't hear the difference either. I like to tell myself, you know, I was still recovering from being hit in the shoulder, not to mention being called Kapilow and grotesque in the same sentence for the first time. But she went on to explain, and she says, Mozart would never have written this. That would have been redundant information. It would have insulted the intelligence. Repeating this note, pointless. What he wrote was, which is so much more beautiful. Then she says, now you have to listen closely here. He would never have written a boring 3-note chord. Now this one's subtle, you have to listen closely. But he adds one extra note, not this, but this. Hear the difference? Not this, but... So you have this beautiful dissonance. So instead of, he writes, and then not, but, I mean, isn't that so exquisite, just that moment? And at that moment, I realized that just like the difference between looking and seeing, there is a vast difference between hearing and listening. Though I'd been hearing those notes go by for months as I was practicing the piece, I had never really listened to them. Real listening required paying attention to what I was hearing in a completely different way. And I realized that I had never actually listened to a piece of music from the composer's point of view, from the inside out. I had paid attention, to use Mary Oliver's words, to what composers wrote, but only in a kind of superficial performance practice kind of way. I paid attention to the notes, to the dynamics, to the tempo markings, to the expression markings, all that kind of stuff, the sort of equivalent of a playwright's stage directions. But I had never really thought about what made a piece of music hang together, what made a piece of music tick, what made a piece of music great. That one moment with Boulanger changed everything. Suddenly my focus shifted from how I was playing to Mozart, to his amazing compositional choices, to the astonishing difference that a single detail can make. I suddenly realized that there's an enormous difference between good and great. That the difference is both enormous, but also infinitesimal. It's hundreds of inspired choices made by a composer, note by note, measure by measure, and piece by piece. And I suddenly realized what all my other music courses had really missed teaching me. The reason you studied a piece of music as a performer was to be astonished. And that kind of astonishment is at the heart of all great performance. It's at the heart of what this entire competition is all about. It's at the heart of what you and the judges are listening for this entire week. And it's at the heart of everything that I want to talk with you about today. Now, one of my favorite quotes in the world comes from the poet Robert Frost. And he says, "No surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader." Or in other words, no surprise for the performer, no surprise for the listener. If the quartets are not astonished by the music that they're playing, you won't be astonished either. So, what does it mean for a quartet to pay attention and be astonished and tell about it? So I thought I would take two examples from this week's BISQ repertoire and sort of show you what I mean by paying attention, being astonished, and tell about it. Now, we're not going to actually get to Beethoven until I think maybe the third round, but it's always great to start with Beethoven. And I thought we should start with the beginning, so start with the actual beginning of his first published quartet, Opus 18, number 1, and just give you a little sample of what I think it means to pay attention and be astonished, both from the point of view of the quartets, but also from the point of view of you as the listeners. Now, I'm sure lots of you have heard this piece because you are truly an insider group of people. How many of you know this beginning? Very good. I'm going to just play the first phrase. I'm not hearing any astonished gasps. All right, now, Boulanger always used to say that as you're listening to any piece of music, what you should be doing is hearing all the possible compositional choices that a composer could have been making at every moment, and then be astonished by the brilliant choices that he actually made at that moment. A piece of music, I often say, is a story told in notes. But it's not a literal story, not like Vivaldi, not the sleeping shepherd is awakened by the spring storm, lulling chords for the sleeping shepherd, fast runs for the violins as you get woken by the spring storm. It's not a literal story, but it's a story told in notes. And a great performance occurs when great performers tell us a musical story that they're astonished by. So, what does that actually mean? All right, now, this starts off with an idea, and I want to look very closely and get inside this. Here's the opening idea. An idea is a possibility. All composition is really about is listening for possibility. Here's the opening idea. All right, now I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about that idea. First of all, is it loud or soft? So, let me make it clear. Okay, it's soft. Now, this is a little easier if you actually had the string quartet here, but I'll try to ask it in a way that you can answer. Is it a melody with an accompaniment, or do both hands in the actual quartet, all the instruments play the same notes? Is it a melody with accompaniment, or everybody in unison? Everybody in unison. Now, that's an idea. What can we do with that idea? You know, Ezra Pound says that genius is the capacity to see 10 things where the ordinary man sees one. Well, this piece actually uses that idea 104 times. So genius is now the capacity to hear 104 things in an idea where the ordinary man sees one. So let's look at what that idea is. Now, you know, this opening idea couldn't be simpler. You know, if Mozart's elegant, aristocratic melodies sound like they come from Tiffany's Jewelers, Beethoven sound like they come from Walmart. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than this. This opening idea is nothing more than what musicians call a turn. We take a note, we decorate it with the note above, and the note below. Those 5 notes are what musicians call a turn because of the way the figure turns around the note. Above it, just sing that 5-note figure on La, and La. That's a turn. Now let's just give it a little rhythm like this. La, 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 ready, go. Now, you've got the key to this idea. Now, I said that repeats 104 times. Now, how do you hear 104 possibilities? Well, that's la, 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 but it's what comes next. The note that comes after that, la, 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 something, that something is a source of unbelievable possibility. Now, the first version goes like this. La, 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 bum. Just sing that. La, 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 la. It's very important that you learn technical vocabulary here. So, la, 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 bum. You know, it's very important that you get that right. Okay, sing it one more time. La, 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 bum. But now I want you to sing it like a possibility. Not like it's there, not like it's just a note, but what can I make out of this? When a quartet plays that first measure, you already know whether they're going to win BISQ. You already know whether they're playing it as a possibility or a fact, which are 2 completely different kinds of performance. Let's sing it like what's going to come next. Ready? And. la, 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 la. All right, so now the first one is the rhythm, and then the bump. Now, I'm going to play what comes next. You tell me what's the same and what's different. Now, by the way, that's the reaction you want. That's the way it could. Which note was different? The last note. Oh, by the way, do I go down to bump after la 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 the first time or up? Here's the first one. Down or up? Down. Second time. Down, but higher, right? So we're going up. You with me so far, right? If we lose you at any point, the whole plot disappears. So even if you're not really with me, say yes and I'll feel better. Yes, okay, good. So we've got now, this is the great thing. This is the moment. We've got an idea. When we repeat it, we've now got a pattern. You know, Aaron Copland in his book talks about how you can't listen to music just at the moment that occurs, but you must listen to music in relationship to what happens before and afterwards. In that first book, which I know you're all going to buy today, there's another brilliant chapter called Compared to What Listening. And what it's really all about is that each moment in music has meaning not just as a tile in and of itself, but in comparison to what comes before and what comes after. Is that last note in the second measure, here's the first one, is this last note here a surprise? Yes, but compared to what? Compared to the first one, right? It's only a surprise. If you're simply hearing the moment that you're on, it's not a surprise. With me so far? I'm starting very slow because I want to make sure we're all with us. Okay, good. Now, then, what could he have done next? Played a Boulanger game. We're always thinking, what are the compositional possibilities? We start like this. Next one changes the bump. If he were horrible, he could have done this. And then maybe, who knows? I don't know. That's the Salieri version. Okay. There's no Salieri in this competition. Okay, good. All right, good. All right, so now, but we are sitting, hanging on the edge. You have to watch a quartet. They don't know what's going to happen either. Really important is to know but not know what's coming next, okay? You know, well, I'll tell you that aside later. Okay, so here we have our idea. We've got this. Now, what happens next is astonishing in three ways, and I want you to tell me the three levels of astonishment. Here's what happens next. I want to hear gasps. What happened? What are the three astonishing things that happened? Anyone give me one? Say again? Yes, first of all, we have harmony. It's like we are inventing the universe in front of your eyes. Here we had no harmony, all unisons. We only know each piece of music introduces its world to us. We don't know the world of a piece of music until he teaches it to us. At the beginning, there's a world with no harmony. No harmony. Suddenly, there's a chord. Wow, everyone is astonished. Not only is there a chord, I can't really do it on the piano, but there's actually a crescendo marking on that chord. It's Beethoven saying, get louder on that chord. He's saying, this is an absolutely special thing. All right, so the first thing is there's a chord. We now have harmony. What else? What are the two other magical, astonishing things? Yes? Yeah, what goes up? Yes, excellent. Bump goes up. In other words, instead of, we now go, whoa, you are all astonished. But not only that, what's the final thing? This is great. You guys are excellent. The phrase will continue, but you don't know that yet. That's right. You didn't. Don't get ahead of yourself. You're too smart. Yes, go ahead. It's more lyrical because there's a melody. And not only that, what octave are we in? We are now up a whole octave. We were here. If I had kept it in the same octave, it would have been the melody. But it's up here. That first violinist must play that as if that's the highest thing ever written. Again, is it high, really? No, it's high compared to what? Compared to the early one. This is really, at that moment, you know whether this group should win the quartet competition. Are they absolutely astonished by this moment? And all of you, as listeners, what an incredible moment. So now we take the idea, we go bump higher, we have harmony, we have a crescendo, we're in a higher octave, and then we make an ending, which is spectacular for three reasons. Here's the ending. Now, what's fantastic about this? First of all, we have a melody, but also for the first time, we have the possibility of duet. We are literally creating the vocabulary of the string quartet for you, right in front of your eyes. We've had the unison vocabulary. We've had the vocabulary of a melody in the first violin with accompaniment. Now we make this beautiful duet. The melody is not just first violin, But it's a beautiful duet with the second violin. And if they're not looking at each other sweetly and smiling as if they were married, you know they're the wrong quartet. They're playing this beautiful duet. And it's such a sweet one. You've never heard duet before. It's a complete... Not only that, there's a spectacular thing for violas who rarely ever get the spectacular moment. He could easily have written. So much of music is he could easily have written, but he did this. That's what Boulanger is all about. He could have easily written... But there's this delicious little figure in the viola. Instead of... He writes... And if you don't see the violist looking at you like that moment, you are not going to vote for that quartet. All right, now, we've finished only one phrase, and we've already paid attention and been astonished by an incredible number of things. But now is where the things really get fun. Remember, I talked about compared to what listening. Each moment in a string quartet, each moment in a piece of music is not about what's happening at that moment. It's about what happened before. Now you've got a whole compared to what tile. You've got a whole phrase to discuss. All right, now, this whole phrase, if I did it right, except for that crescendo, was played softly. Just let me get it in your ear. Now, this is our tile. You've got to remember this. Memory is a key component to understanding music. So here's our whole tile. We have the crescendo here, the diminuendo, our ending with the duet, and the great viola. All right, now, what happens next? And you tell me what's shocking, astonishing, and compared to what? What just happened? Aside from me playing badly, what? Yeah, volume. Now we're repeating the opening idea, but now it's loud. Now, Beethoven never got tired of playing soft ideas loud. Now, it's not just the simple shock value that you get out of talking softly and then screaming loud. I mean, anyone can do that. What he was interested in is transformation of character. It's like you meet this lovely woman on your first date. She's so sweet. But then all of a sudden you marry her and you discover is a possibility as well. It's always about discovering a new character, a new side to this person's personality. All right, but now is where the fun really begins. All right, now, is that the same music as the first measure, only louder, though? Yes? You're with me there, right? Okay? So we go like this. What are we absolutely sure is going to come next? Sing it. Exactly, and it does. Now, one thing that's so important, and every piece of art, every piece of music, from the simplest comic strip to the most complex Ulysses novel, embeds in its notes or in its words a belief about who the audience is and what they're capable of following. When Beethoven writes two statements now loudly, what he's assuming is everyone in this room is the most intelligent listener in the world, that you are going to follow the pattern and that you are going to then guess what comes next. So once you've had the first one, we get in our mind, you don't have to know this consciously, we're playing the opening but loud. Then the next one confirms your belief and you feel, I'm safe, I know what's going to happen. That's where the big moments happen. So what should happen next? Loud and high, and it should be the full orchestra, right? With me? If you don't expect that, it will never be great. If a quartet doesn't expect that, they have no business being at the competition. No matter how well they play in tune, no matter how much they shake their heads, they are never going to really convince you that this is great music. You got to, everyone in this room, I want you to physically, in every bone of your body, expect this. With me? Let's do it one more time. This is the loud version. You're with me? You're feeling smart? You're thinking, here's next. But here's what happens instead. That, by the way, is all I ever wanted from an audience. And that's what should happen at every performance. Now, why is this stunning and shocking? What's the first surprise about this? It's soft, and that was the moment where we had harmony, right? Now we don't have any harmony. It's the first violin alone. If that first violinist in the quartet doesn't look naked, fragile, and vulnerable, where is everybody out to me helping me? Now, by the way, why is that moment astonishing? Only compared to what? In and of itself, it's nothing. Unless you are hearing and carrying the first tile, the first phrase with you, that moment isn't astonishing at all. You are the ones that make that moment great. You're the ones who make it astonishing. Okay, so not only do we not have harmony, but it's one. Now, what should be the next note? Everyone in your body expects, right? But instead we get a two-note sigh instead of a bump. I mean, how could you substitute a two-note sigh for a bump? A two-note sigh with an incredibly intense chord. Remember, each piece of music introduces you to its world, its vocabulary, step by step. We have never had an intense chord. All of a sudden, we have 3 shocks in a compared to what way? Then, as if that's not bad enough, what does he do next? Oh no, he does it again even higher. We're praying he's not going to do it a third time. Now, what he does is so subtle. He does do it a third time, but changes the rhythm. What you expect if you're playing Boulanger, which you are now, you've been here for I don't know how many minutes. I shouldn't look because we'll never finish. Instead of this, he does that, but changes the rhythm. And then makes it into an ending, and everything's fine. And the world is safe. An incredible journey. Do you got it? Now, that's what it's all about. If a quartet is not taking that journey, and you're not taking that journey, if they're not paying attention at each moment to each thing, compared to what? To each moment of astonishment, there's no reason to listen, and there's no reason why that quartet should be in the next round. With me so far? Okay, good. Now, one of the things that's so difficult about this string quartet competition from the point of view of the quartets as well as the audience is that there's such an enormously wide range of repertoire. In a way, the entire competition actually covers the entire history of the string quartet. I mean, it starts with Haydn, the beginning of the string quartet, and it literally goes up to the present day with a commission piece, and it's got everything in between. And since each one of these pieces really comes from its own unique moment in time and its own unique musical world, in a way, it's really like asking these quartets to speak multiple foreign languages fluently. What it takes to pay attention and be astonished by a Beethoven string quartet is utterly different from what it takes to pay attention and be astonished by a Haydn quartet, or, for example, this little scherzo I'm going to look at that's coming up in the second round from Opus 33, number 5. And even though the pieces were written less than 20 years apart, though on the surface their musical languages might look superficially, they're actually completely different. And though this scherzo might, on a surface level, look fairly traditional and conventional, it's actually wildly subversive at every single moment in time. Now, as I said, the scherzo might look traditional on the surface, and in fact, all of the scherzos you're going to hear in the Haydn round have an absolutely similar basic fundamental setup. I'm sure many of you know this, but for those of you who don't, like all of the scherzos in the scherzo round, this one is in 3 large sections. The first section, called the scherzo, is 2 parts, both parts repeated. The middle section, called the trio, 2 parts, both parts repeated. Then we come back, play the opening without repeats, scherzo, trio, scherzo, A, B, A. Couldn't possibly be simpler. However, when you look inside this, every single measure of this is utterly irregular and utterly subversive. So let's get inside this scherzo, and we'll do some of this together, just to get a sense of what it means to pay attention and be astonished by this music, which is completely different from the Beethoven one. Now, the scherzo, though somewhat faster than its predecessor, the Minuet, also has 3 beats in a measure. Sort of something like this. If I play the accompaniment of this opening, sort of goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. I just want you to say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Very simple. That's a normal 3-beat scherzo. Now, I want you to really feel the downbeat on each one, so I want you to just clap on one. So I'll do it once. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop, and really feel the downbeat. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. That's a normal scherzo. Now, if I simply add a little 2-note upbeat in the violin, which I'm going to call and a, before the 1, and a 1, I'll do that part of it, and I change the melody of this scherzo, it's utterly traditional, it's in 3 regular beats, there's absolutely nothing to pay attention to or be astonished by. So here's how it might have begun if it were a traditional scherzo, which it almost sounds like if you're not listening closely. It might have begun like this, and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Now, I want you to do that for me. So what I want you to say is, I'm going to say the and I want you to come in on the 1. So I'll do it once, so it'll be and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. So I'll say the and you come in on 1. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. And do the clapping on the downbeat, okay? So I'll go and you'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop, and feel like you're playing it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Now I want you to clap with vigor. This is a peasant barroom kind of sound. Here we go, okay? 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Okay, but that's not what he wrote. Now, what he did, which is so spectacular, is instead of that 3-beat unit that you're now very good at going 1, 2, 3, he actually takes the first violin melody and makes it in groups of 2. So the melody is not, and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop, but it's, and a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So what you're going to do is I'll do the and of, and you'll go, and I'll do the and you'll go, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There are 5 of them. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now do that with the music and feel like you're playing the first violin part. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's right. The fact that you clap there is that confusion is part of the music, and we'll see what that means. Let's do it one more time just so you're comfortable. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Exactly. Now, what makes this so spectacular is both things are happening at the same time. The accompaniment is actually playing what you clapped the first time. The accompaniment is playing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop, while the first violin is playing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we're going to divide you up into 2 parts. Now, since I want to hear the first violin close to me to make sure you're not making any mistakes, you guys have the easy part. That part, I want you to do the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. All right, let's try your part. I do the and-a. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Okay? You guys have the easy part. Now you guys do the violin part. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now let's put it together at the same time. Okay? Because that's what the quartet actually is doing. Polyrhythms did not start with Stravinsky. They started right here in this scherzo. All right, let's see what happens. I'll do the one, and you come in, and hopefully it will be a mess. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, I start, and a 1, 2. Not bad, actually. Now, by the way, let's be honest here. How many of you were doing anything other than listening to yourself and ignoring them? You were all doing your part, right, and ignoring them, right? Okay, that's good. Now, how many of you were remotely paying any attention to them? No, absolutely not. Now, what's really hard in a quartet is to do both. So this time, I want you to be there. Don't be smug going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, because you have the easy part. I want you to both do that, but see if you can do your part and hear their part. And I want you, while you're doing your 1, 2, see if you can hear their part. Okay, let's try it. There'll be no lie detector test at the end, so if you get it wrong, it won't matter. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, I start. How'd you do? Hard, right? You know, that's why these quartets go through so many rounds to get here. All right, now, couple questions for you, because the fun is just beginning. This is such a fantastic piece. All right, now, there are 10 beats in all. You did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, stop, right? 10? But you divided those 10 beats 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So question, did you end on an accented beat, a clap, or a downbeat? Yes, you did. You ended on 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. But now, what was so hard for you is, did you end on a downbeat, clap, or not? No, you ended on 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's like you've been going table, 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 table. And in fact, that's what Haydn does. He writes an accent, sforzando it's called, on that last note, so no matter whether you're a downbeat or not, you gotta whack it. You got to whack it, and somehow we all come together, and there's a moment of delicious confusion for the person who's playing in 2, who suddenly has to whack it like a downbeat. Now, this is only the beginning of the opportunities. He then takes advantage of your total confusion of where the beat is to have the first violin alone slide up a chromatic scale. For non-musicians, a chromatic scale simply is a scale that moves from any note on the piano up or down to the next nearest note. Whenever you're polishing your piano, you're playing a chromatic scale. That's what a chromatic scale is. So, first violin takes advantage of your confusion and plays this chromatic scale without any attempt to clarify things. He says he has no idea where the beat is, and I'm not going to help you in any way. I don't know where it is. And then this is what makes it so spectacular. He then gives us just enough music. Remember what I told you, every piece embeds a belief in the listener and what they'll follow. He gives you just enough clarity of beat to make you feel like we're going to have our first regular pattern in the piece. Just enough. And we now expect, reason and order are going to be restored. We'll have a nice normal cadence, and all that stuff at the beginning that was so confusing, the threes and the twos, will be gone. So here's what you expect playing Boulanger to happen. And that would be lovely and everything would be fine. But instead, in a moment that almost defines the term heightened-esque, what he does is he adds a measure of rest that completely confuses everything and then makes the actual cadence utterly irregular and almost surreal, like one of those bowler hats in a Magritte painting. Everything else, by the way, has been loud except the ending. But so here's what he does instead. Here's what you expect. That would be fine. Here's what you get. And if you're not laughing, if the quartet isn't laughing, we are in the wrong place. By the way, it is perfectly permissible to laugh in a concert hall. And in fact, that's what you always want. All I've ever wanted during a heightened quartet was for people to do what you just actually did there. You got that with me? This is our first phrase. So it's so surreal, that one extra measure rest. Whoops. Now, this looks like the normal first phrase of a scherzo, but as we look closer, we realize every single measure is irregular. Not one thing is what it appears to be by. And the good news or the bad news is the second section is even worse. You know, one thing that's really important is these heightened string quartets were written for an incredibly intelligent audiences, for an audience like you, for an audience of insiders. Really, the actual audience for a heightened string quartet at this time in the 1780s was first and foremost the performers themselves. There were no concerts of string quartets. So the first audience was incredibly knowledgeable, the actual performers themselves. And if they happened to invite listeners over for after-dinner concerts or playing, they most likely themselves also played music and were musically literate. So this assumes that you are insiders. It assumes that when Haydn creates an expectation, you get it. It assumes that as soon as he starts a pattern and does it one more time, you instantly recognize the pattern, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So when he starts the second half with a short six-note idea in the first violin and a chord in the other parts, here's the idea. Now, that's all you need for an idea for Haydn. So that's the idea. Get it in your head. There's 6 notes in the melody, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's one chord on the third note. That's your idea. Let's follow out that idea. Now, what does he do next? He copies the idea lower. Now, again, he assumes you're brilliant. That's all you need for a pattern. If I say the number 2, you don't know what the pattern is. If I say 2, 4, you have a pattern and you know the next one will be 6. So you need 2 statements of an idea to have an expectation, to have a pattern. So let's do that one more time so you really have that expectation in your ear. Here's the idea. Lower. A bad composer would go and actually do it a third time. Now, this is the hardest example of the piece, and I want you to follow it instant by instant, because it goes by in the concert in an instant, but I want you to follow note by note the amazing choices and be astonished. So here's the idea, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we do it lower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, you're experts now. We've done a 45 minutes. When he doesn't do this, but he does this instead. Here's the idea. When I play the next 3 notes, what do you think is going to happen? Now, this is sophisticated. What am I doing? Anyone want to give it a shot? This is sophisticated. This is the hardest example. I've saved it for last. Here was the second statement. Here was the second statement. And now I go, so what do you think I'm going to do? Carry on, finish this idea. Now this idea, remember, was in the first violin with a chord underneath. But now everybody starts it. So you think I'm going to play in unison with me so far? If you're not with me, then I'm wasting my time and we'll be very upset. Okay? You with me? Yes? One more time. So here was the idea with a chord, but now we play it in unison. So you expect, right? Expect that with every fiber of your being. Okay, but here's what happens instead. So we expect, but what he does is, already, That's what you should be doing at this competition. It's so funny. He gets stuck on the first two notes. So instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he plays 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, which seems like the longest measure in history. Again, compared to what? Only compared to what we've heard. Everything is compared to what? You got to finish this book of mine. Okay, all right. So instead, we go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, this is the best thing, and this is so subtle, but you're going to get every note. So then he continues. Here was the idea, remember? But he goes, what should be the next note? But here's what we get. Isn't that spectacular? And then we get the right note. We get 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, 6. It's just, that is what quartets have to have in them. If they are not shocked and astonished by that, there is no peace there. And then we finish. So we have this 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 5, oops, 6, and then he adds a fermata, which simply means hold that note. And the whole point of that fermata is you're going, what is going on here? I thought I was safe. At this point, we are completely lost. We want some kind of order and reason to be established. We haven't had a single regular phrase in the entire piece. Now, order in the classical period means repetition. So what you're doing there is sitting and praying that he'll repeat something. And he almost does. So much of Haydn is he almost. And once again, it's all about you understanding. What he does is he starts to repeat the opening that we started with, the thing you clapped, the 2 in the violin and the 3, but he repeats it transposed. For non-musicians, that simply means starting on a different note. The original version, now again, this is where compared to what comes into all its glory. The original version, remember it, went like this. We start to repeat that transposed. Got it? Now, if we copied it exactly, again, Boulanger, you have to hear, this is the exact copy. This is so spectacular. Here would be an exact copy. Got it? That's the exact copy. So this is what you expect when we start. Got it? But here's what he does instead. Now, just to make sure you actually got what he did, because it goes by so fast, is we did this part exactly correctly. Again, just enough to lure you into the trap. But instead of going, we take this and lengthen each note. Instead of, we lengthen each note. Got it? So, becomes, got it? With just the solo violin. With me? So then, just as you're recovering from that shock, because you thought you were safe, we were repeating. Uh-oh, what's this? Then the worst thing of all happens. Now the entire quartet switches from 3-beat units to 2-beat units for the first time. And now all of a sudden, just for 4 beats, the whole scherzo dissolves into 2-beat units. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then just as he tries to right the ship and get us back to a regular cadence, and this one is so subtle, he should have finished like this. And we would have been safe. But instead of, he adds one delicious extra measure and makes it, is that not spectacular? Every single measure. Now, there are 2 more phrases, but we would be here all day. You'll just have to wait till the Haydn round and you'll actually hear what happens. But trust me, they're equally irregular. Every single phrase in what looks like an absolutely regular scherzo turns out to be completely irregular. What this really is a subversive revolution within the very classical tradition that Haydn himself had created. But only if you're paying attention and being astonished. Now, when you're astonished by something, and I'm sure you've all had the experience of being astonished by a great movie or a great book, you want to tell about it. You want to share it with others. And the same thing's true for music. For a performer, it's not enough to simply pay attention and be astonished by great music. In itself, that's incomplete, and in a strange way, it's ultimately selfish. The brilliant writer on mythology, Joseph Campbell, talks about the archetypical idea of the hero's journey that underlies so much of Western mythology and fiction, from the Odyssey all the way up to the Star Wars trilogy. And in the archetype of the hero's journey, Campbell says, the hero starts his journey at home. But then he leaves home, the world of the castle, the world of the society, the world of knowing what you know. You go off into the woods, outside the norms of society, into the realm of what we don't know, that we don't know, and you discover astonishing things. You gain knowledge, often self-knowledge. But as Campbell says, the journey is incomplete unless you ultimately come back and share what you've learned with the community. The journey is not a hero's journey unless you come back and share it. And that's what you must do as a performer. What we're really listening for are quartets who are actually willing to go out into what they don't know, pay attention, be astonished, come back and share what they've learned with us. Now, I want to sort of talk a little bit in this final section really about you to sort of close this. We've been talking so far about Mary Oliver's instructions to pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it, really from the point of view of the quartets in the competition. But as I hope has been clear from that little Beethoven and Haydn example that we looked at, these instructions apply to all of you as well. These are really just as much about you. So I want to focus in this last section on you and your audience listening. And I want to do this by way of two quotations that have had an enormous influence in my life and that I hope will really resonate for you throughout this competition and maybe even after that. And it does require, once again, just a brief bit of biographical context so you understand these quotations. I was very fortunate to be hired the very day I got out of graduate school for my first job as the conductor of the Yale Symphony Orchestra and an assistant professor at Yale. And I spent 6 wonderful years in my 20s conducting and teaching at Yale, all sorts of wonderful music. As I said, my 20s, great way to spend your 20s. At the end of my last year, or sort of in the middle of my last year, I got an offer to conduct the Tony Award-winning musical 9 on Broadway. And for a foolish 3-month period, I tried to do both jobs at the same time. For those of you who don't know the geography, Yale's about an hour and 15-minute train ride in New Haven from New York. So I would teach and conduct Beethoven and all that kind of classical music during the day, and then I would take the train down to Broadway, conduct the show, and then take the 11:20 train home at night after the show. And I did this for three foolish months. And it gave me a lot of time on the train to think about the enormous differences between the world of Broadway and the world of Yale, or the world of popular music and the world of classical music. And it forced me to pay attention, to use Mary Oliver's terms, to some uncomfortable truths. Any of you who have ever spoken to an audience of any kind, not a large one like this, even an audience of one, you know what it's like when your message is getting across, when the audience is getting it. On Broadway, not only were millions of people every night willing to pay exorbitant sums of money to come and see this show, but the audience clearly got it. You could tell they understood the musical language. They knew when to clap, they responded to every cool lick in the orchestration. The audience got it. However, then I would go back and do these classical concerts, and there's just simply no that kind of sense of understanding at the same time. The show clearly spoke a musical language that America understood far better than they understood the language of the classical concerts that I conducted or attended. And each day going back and forth between those two worlds, the world of Broadway where everybody got it and was eager to be there, and the more polite world of classical music, because I didn't have you guys there, where people didn't seem to get it nearly as much, became more and more painful. And I gradually began to realize that paying attention, being astonished, and telling about the music I loved was pointless if the people I was telling didn't actually understand what I was saying to them. And at the time, I sort of ran across 2 wonderful quotations that crystallized this for me that I sort of want to share for you. The first one, somehow I stumbled on a message board outside of church, and I still have no idea why a church put it up there, but it was a quote from Walt Whitman that really has grown to sort of almost define my entire career. And the quote was, "To have great poets, there must be great audiences." Or in my version, to have great music, there must be great listeners. Without great listeners, without you, great music is like a tree that falls in the forest that nobody hears. Now, I want you to keep that quotation in mind as I give you the second one, which sort of puts this topic in a sort of larger, more general philosophical context. This one came about in an equally bizarre context when I was at a corporate retreat for the top 100 employees of Hallmark greeting cards. If you're interested in the story behind it, I'll tell you during the Q&A, but it's not really pertinent here, but it was a bizarre story. But you never know where you're going to find great ideas. Anyway, a consultant was giving a speech about communication, and he said, Self-expression doesn't happen here. Self-expression happens out there. That's a really extraordinary quote. Self-expression doesn't happen here, it happens out there. A quartet may think that they're expressing themselves, deeply engaged in the music they're playing, tossing their hair, swaying their bodies. They may think they're expressing themselves, but if you don't get it, they're not expressing anything. In a way, you are the actual ultimate judge and the ultimate test for these quartets this week, not the judges. Don't tell them that. But you are actually the ultimate test for these quartets this week. What you're looking for is a quartet whose self-expression shoots across the footlights. A quartet who seems to be speaking and playing directly to you, whose musical storytelling is so compelling that you can't help but pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, on the internet, email, cell phone, text, by whatever kind of form of communication you have. That's the kind of quartet you're looking for, whose self-expression shoots across the footlights. Now, we are, of course, here for a competition that will inevitably pick winners and losers. However, I promise you that what makes this week special has absolutely nothing to do with who wins or loses this quartet. Over this week, you're going to form your own very special community with everybody else around here as you spend a ridiculous amount of time thinking about, discussing, and listening to these string quartets. I know that you're going to gradually develop a bond through this kind of shared listening experience, not only with all your other audience members, but with the quartets as well. E.M. Forster's famous dictum is, connect, only connect. I love that quote. Connect, only connect. And I know that you're going to feel a rare form of connection with everybody involved with you in this week's intense listening experience, no matter who wins and no matter who loses. One final point. As all of you know who have ever presented an idea to anyone, to a boss, to your spouse, to your teenager, that's a particularly hard one, but that's another conversation, or anyone else, how you listen enormously, or how someone listens to you, enormously influences your ability to express yourself. In the presence of an optimistic, positive, visionary boss, you can feel like a genius, full of ideas and possibilities. But in the presence of a negative boss, or any Republican in the entire United States Congress, you can feel like an idiot, bereft of ideas with no hope of accomplishing anything. How we listen to others determines their self-expression. So listen generously this week. Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. A quartet's self-expression lives only in your listening. And it's the quality and generosity of your listening that will ultimately make this week so special. To have great music, there must be great listeners. In the end, you are the ones that make the Banff competition great. Thank you.